at 10 Hut. Good evening, everybody. Listen, don't try to adjust your TV screen. All right, Ron is not on with us tonight, but the good Eric Dym is sitting in for him. Eric, how are you tonight? How's everything?
Pretty good. I just want to disclose information to the public here, our friends and listeners. We did not plan to wear the same colored shirt, but somehow it happened. I guess it's military green today. So you know what? We'll represent our veterans here. Outstanding. What a pleasure to be doing the show with you, Rob. You know, I'm a big fan of your leadership and what you did on the job. And to be your friend now is even better. So with that being said, good evening, everyone. It's 17:05, right? Eastern time, which is 5:05 p.m. for me. 1:05 in the 49th state of Alaska. Beautiful out here. It doesn't get dark. It's amazing. This is the younger version of Ron Layson. So Ron couldn't make it today. He's busy. He had his daughter's birthday today, so I hope he's enjoying celebrating. So I hope I could walk in his shoes today. And let's get into it. We got a hell of a topic. It's about the NYPD. Should I stay or should I go? What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's going to be a good show. You know, interesting, right? With all the political things that are changing and guys having to make decisions and stuff. So yeah, we'll definitely get into that. I think the first thing I want to do is just real quick. There was a incident with the fire department, the FDNY, our brothers in red, and for ESU guy to call them brothers in red, it's a tough thing, no, but they really are. They really, and I love the FDNY. You know what? You've seen them at funerals supporting our guys and everything else. You go by their fire trucks when we have a line of duty death. They got a nice blue stripe on there. But this case here, the FDNY suspends an officer, actually a lieutenant, for giving hot girls ride on the fire truck as the department probes a frat house behavior. So what I was kind of a little shocked about it was that, you know, there's a picture of the two girls there. The vehicle's actually in motion at the time the picture's taken. And I think that's the problem. That was against their policy. They can have people on the fire trucks while it's parked as a display or whatever. But I think while the fire truck's in motion, they don't want any civilians on there. So what sparked my attention was that you normally don't see a lieutenant or any officers get suspended. He actually ended up getting suspended for 5 days. So I was a little taken back, you know, because I could see that in the NYPD, but not in the FDNY. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think, you know, is that he got suspended for 5 days and he got transferred out of his firehouse? I mean, do you think that was a fair hit for him? I don't know. You know,
I'm glad to discuss this with you, right? Because obviously our background is NYPD, and you being a retired chief, excuse me, I was so curious to get your insight, right? Your lens, because you would look at this from the view of the leadership representing not just the men on the street, the boots on the ground, but the entire job. And then in your role, you would have to look at the bigger picture. How does this affect the entire city? So I think the real question, this is the question I have. Was this an actual breach of public trust, or is this just bad optics or poor optics in the social media era? And it kind of relates to something we talked about when you started your Q&A segment, where does political optics override policy? So in my opinion, I'm kind of shocked by this. My cousin's a fireman. He's actually retiring this month. And the fire department was fantastic to me throughout my career. I got nothing but love for them. And they've been fantastic to me in the loss of my son. Unbelievable. But to see this, right, I think I get it. Okay, with social media, it changed the world and it's out there. But was it really that big of a deal? I think this is an overreach. I think the discipline is way too harsh. And obvious this particular fireman doesn't have the right connections, because we know nepotism is high in this administration. I think it's an overreach, and I think this is about optics. I just think it's sad to see that the fire department is starting to emulate the NYPD. From my perspective, I think this is too harsh. This is way too much discipline. What are your thoughts? I mean, you imagine you're in the NYPD, what are you thinking? What are you thinking now?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, like, you know, their culture, and I think Amazing Ant said something in the chat real quick. that it's FDNY has always had a more relaxed work environment, and we know that, right? It's just the way it's been, and obviously, yeah, a high adrenaline job and shared meals with the firehouses. How many times have you been on a foot post where the firemen will come out to you and say, "Hey, come on in, come in for meal or whatever, come in and relax," and they always took care of us. So when I see a 5-day suspension and a transfer, I definitely think from my perspective that it's definitely excessive. And I think that, like, Commissioner Tucker, right, who's the fire commissioner, I think there's a political component to this now, because I see Adams running, and he doesn't want any type of thing that could derail his career or as a mayor, which we already know is already derailed, right? We know it's not going anywhere, but he doesn't want it's perception management, like Marlon always says, right? So by seeing those two guys or the two gals in the fire engine, what's the perception? That it's a frat house and it's a big party from the same guy, right? The same mayor who's all he doing is partying, and all these guys did put them on the fire engine ladder and drove them around. And his complaint was, oh, that if there was a fire, it would slow the response time. I mean, yeah, I understand. 15 seconds to get those girls out of there. Get off the rig. We got to go to fire. Okay, 15 seconds. Yes, if my house was on fire, is 15 seconds important? But I don't think it's anything crazy, and I definitely doesn't. I don't think it deserves a 5-day suspension. On top, hey, you want to transfer the guy? All right, I get that. But a 5-day suspension, I think it's definitely excessive, and I think it's politically motivated. I don't know. What do you think?
No doubt about it. It's politically motivated. So this is a great picture, by the way. Thank you, Jack. Perfect timing. So here's Mayor Eric Adams. So we're talking about what would be the response of the NYPD in comparison to the FDNY. What do we see under this administration? Hypocrisy. That's what we see, because the response and the knee-jerk reaction to this fireman's incident with and I love how they call it the hot girl, right? They made such a big deal because girls coming out of clubs, and I know that area, the Lower East Side, it's full of women coming out of clubs at the time. But this isn't about the FDNY and NYPD. This is exactly, that picture was perfect, Jack. This is about the Eric Adams administration, because Chief Madry was running a brothel at one police plaza, complete frat house. And what was the reaction? He retired into bliss. And we didn't hear a response from Mayor Eric Adams. But yet, we see what happened here with this fireman. The response is insane. I mean, we talk about brotherhood, right? Camaraderie. Where do we draw the line from enforcement and discipline to just completely out of control and an overreach and destroy morale? And where do we draw that line? That's where leadership is so important. And Eric Adams is supposed to lead this city. Just shows another epic failure. This is not, to me, it's not about the FDNY and NYPD. This is about Eric Adams. You nailed it right there, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And you would think that the fire commissioner would stand up a little bit for him if he was in fact told, was in fact told by Adams, hey, you better take that guy out or whatever. That I can't have that. It can't be in the newspaper. It can't be the front news. And there should have been some pushback, or at least by somebody in the fire department. It's a little excessive. But the fire commissioner, he made his decision, and I totally agree. It's wrong. You know what? The sad thing is, like you said, Madry retires with a full pension, right? And they can all do whatever they want. We have other sexual scandals that are going on in 1PP, right? So, when does that stop? Did it really stop by even Madry leaving? No, it continued on. I mean, no lessons were learned with Madry. He obviously on the top, he tells everybody shouldn't be doing it, and then he's doing it, and then he gets really pushed out because he's doing it, and then it can still continue. So where is that? What was the lesson learned? So this poor fireman, what's his lesson? He just got a 5-day hit for something that I probably would think that it's done a lot more often in the fire department than we see. And this may only have been come to light because it's on social media, So I think that's that's one of the things that I guess ruined the NYPD and ruined the FDNY was the video cameras, right? So because you could push a little back further.
Hey, Ron Layson says, thanks for filling in. Listen, I got big shoes to fill here, And by the way, I know he wears glasses. I need glasses to look like Ron Layson today. So I try to get a pair. Actually, I need them. I've been, lately I've been looking at the phone or reading. I'm like, oh my God, it's a blur. So maybe I'm not that young anymore. But I think, honestly, when we look at this, it's sad state of affairs because I think we have to look, I think discipline, and you kind of alluded to it, right? Discipline should be meant not to punish, but to correct and make things better. But ultimately, it's kind of no harm, no foul. I think this could have been just a 2-minute conversation. Hey, listen, I get it. You want to have a little fun. Right now, we got all eyes on us. It's election year. We need to kind of chill, right? Just that's it. But yet, I mean, we have such a reaction that we take action. But yet we see Jeffrey Madry, and we talk about what's the cause and effect. The cause and effect to this is really nothing, right? We talk about 15 seconds. How about the 200 hours of overtime that Lieutenant Epps was afforded to for not even showing up to work because Jeffrey Madry was getting his rocks off? I mean, this is ridiculous when we talk about comparison. But who's to blame? John always says, all roads lead to Eric Adams. I think he's right. Right. Yeah. And leadership is so important. Ultimately, he's the one running this city just to complete failure. So I think this just destroys morale even further than it already is. To see this with the fire department is sad. But is that commissioner really going to stand up? He's not going to make it in the Eric Adams administration if he's not a loyalist. So he can't. So he's just another patsy and a puppet, just like Jessica Tisch.
Right, exactly. And speaking of Jessica Tisch, we can segue right into the Gay Pride Parade, right? So, in 2021, I believe they kind of the people that do the parade, the organizers said they didn't want the NYPD marching in uniform, and I think that came out of the George Floyd riots and things like that, the perception. So they stopped it, and then they said they would eventually evaluate it, later on. So the illustrious NYPD police commissioner slams the New York City Pride March as deeply offensive for excluding LGBT cops in uniform, especially as they provide security. So we know that everybody assigned to the detail, right? They were in uniform, but that was okay. But you can't have gay officers marching in the parade, which is to me totally absurd. I mean, this should have been settled a long time ago. But for her to come out and say stuff is like really, what is her concern now? All of a sudden, has she said anything previously? The prior police commissioners, I haven't heard anything about them. But she has to put herself at the parade, and she has to be standing there, with our chief of department, right, who didn't look happy at all. Not, there was no happiness in him standing there, and she's, I guess, professing that she supports the pride officers, which absolutely. I've worked with gay and lesbians in the NYPD, and you know what? I have no problem with that at all. Great cops, they did the job, but it doesn't matter whether you're white, black, or brown. Gay, that doesn't matter, right? It was when we put the blue uniform on, we all turned blue, and we take care of each other. So I just think that this was another publicity stunt by Tisch to kind of show Adams, look, this is I'm out here supporting. Adams was able to march, so Attorney General Letitia James marched. And our illustrious governor, right, Hochul, actually stopped for a photo op with Tisch. Is that now what was that for? Could that be for money? You're muted.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
I'm messing up in Ron's shoes here, but to me, what I see right now is, you're right. I mean, we have to love everybody, and we do, right? Police officers do. And it's funny how they say police officers are racist and all this bias stuff. And if anybody that loves everyone, it's police officers, right? Because you don't know who you're going to help on a particular day. You don't get the choice, right? It's chosen for you. But what I see here is virtual signaling. This is virtual signaling in an election year because for the past 3 years, it's been a complete failure when it comes to these parades. This parade was ultra violent, right? Listen, I worked the Gay Pride Parade many years. We talked about this on the podcast before, myself and John on the Friday Roundtable. I worked the big one, right? That's the big parade. But there's some smaller Gay Pride parades throughout the city.
Right.
I worked those. I never had any real violence. Yeah, we had some tussles, some hand-to-hand fist fights, things like that, some shouting matches, but not to the point where someone got shot and killed. This is insane. But what I see here is just pure virtual signaling. And here's where I have the problem with it. The problem is I believe that picture with Triple Fat Neck Shell and other members of the upper echelon of the police department, virtual signaling. Here we go. This is not a place for the chief of department. You're supposed to remain apolitical. So now every time there's an issue with a parade or some type of event, are they going to get up and give their opinion? They should stay out of it. Now, it's kind of muddy waters when we talk about Jessica Tisch. It's kind of a fine line if she should get involved or not, maybe to a point. But here, we don't want Eric Adams to be involved. But honestly, at this point, this is who should be involved. It should be Eric Adams, who is the politician, to get involved with this. The police department, their job is to maintain safety, and that's it. The irony to that is the Pride Parade. The reason why it was named Pride itself is supposed to reflect freedom and safety. And the police officers there with their weapons, the weapon is a part of the uniform. Eric Adams, the former cop, should have put out a public press and explained that the weapon is part of the uniform and we're here to maintain safety. But that's not what he did. This was just complete virtual signaling. And John Shell, the upper echelon, woo, look at me. I gotta cheer for my boss. But it's funny because if he doesn't get reelected, he's going to be cheering for Mamdani. Woo!
Exactly.
Virtual signaling, that's what I see.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, he was just there because he was told to be there. And Mamdani gets in and he's not there anymore anyway, right? Unless he becomes a chameleon right away and changes his colors and stripes. But I think he's gonna get the boot. So maybe that's why he's not happy, because he realized Eric's not doing well, and his political aspirations are drowning, and Tisch might not even be there, right? But so what I'd like to talk about real quick is that everybody who's marching, I'm sure Zoran also, right? You got Adams marching, you got him marching, you got Kathy Hochul marching, Letitia James. You're going to tell me that all their security didn't have guns? How does that happen? Oh, so they can march in the parade as a protector for their protectee and have their guns, but we can't march, because when you remember about when we're marching in dress uniform, our guns are concealed, and the people for the parade organizers didn't even want the NYPD in uniform with concealed weapons. So we're not wearing a gun belt. It's literally in a pancake holster next to us, right? And you can't see the gun. But their security, all their security was carrying guns. So personally, I don't think it has anything to do with the guns. It has everything to do with the uniform, that they don't want to see cops marching in the Gay Pride Parade, period. It has nothing to do with the weapon. The weapon's an easy thing. Oh, the weapon is part of our uniform, so we have to march with our weapons on, because obviously you do. If somebody attacks you because you're a police officer, right, you have to have a weapon to be able to defend yourself. So I think it was just like a ruse to get them out of there and say it's the weapon. And I would really love to know if all those security detail guys, if they didn't have their weapons on them when they were for their protectees while they're marching up and down the block, and yeah, you're right. You said it earlier. Tisch does have a certain, I guess, responsibility to the members in the department that are gay or lesbians to right the wrong and say, I support them. I don't know if it necessarily need, cameras and pictures and everything else, but that could have easily been said in a memo or whatever. But yeah, I totally agree. I've worked that parade many times.
Oh, we
Um,
know.
yeah, but see, I took it totally different level, right? So the background story with that was I was at the parade, and we were up along that fence, and I there was like two or three guys with me, and this individual came running over and was looking to give a hug to somebody. So lo and behold, everybody stepped away and stepped back. I was the only one that turned and stayed there, and I got a really big hug. And I'll tell you, to this day, Eric, to be perfectly honest with you, been hugged by a lot of people. That day was the best hug I ever got. That was the strongest and a loving hug I ever got in my life. So I have to stay with that. But yeah, no, I mean it's crazy that that things like that things like that happen, and you have to roll with it, man.
You you Ron Lason put, isn't that you and Eric the day you met? Yeah, it kind of looks like me if I walk past the woman. It's pretty funny. You can tell you had a great time. So it to the unknown person in that photo, if you're watching this podcast, his name is Rob LuKach. He lives in Florida. Uh, we can hook you up. We'll give you his phone number. This is all over. Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I got a funny story, and because you're talking about, that was a strong hug. I'll never forget. I was working in the Lower East Side, and I actually was working at the 10th Precinct when I was doing anti-crime. And I'll never forget. We were in the stairs. We were doing what was called a vertical at that time. So anybody who's not NYPD just means you go up and down the stairs, and you're basically doing a check of the building. And I'll never forget, we had this transvestite that was about 6'3", big black kid, big, like muscular, but dressed as a woman. And it kind of like took me off guard. He was smoking weed at the time. It was legal, but we didn't care. We're looking for guns. So he got nervous. He threw it on the floor. So we just started talking to him. I never forget. I was just kind of leaning on the wall, my head leaning on the walls. Relax. I let my guard down. Even though I know it's a man, I see woman. And he got nervous, and he went and pushed past me to try to get away. And my head hit the wall, and I had this big mouse on my head. And it was me and this Polish cop that used to work for me. And next thing you know, we're fighting with him. All the family comes out, and he's like, "Oh my God, this is a really strong girl." That was a wild experience. So, of course, his picture was up in the precinct with my picture, and you can imagine what they wrote. So
Yeah.
that's the times I miss at a police department. That's what was fun. We talk about, should you stay or should you go in the NYPD? That's when it was fun. But listen, you know what's interesting? I have to say this. When we talk about the parade, the whole thing about the Pride Parade is for expression and a chance for gay and lesbian to not hide who they are. Just be who you are, right? And yet what you said is so true. We have armed police personnel, and because it's concealed, it's okay. But it's the irony, right? We can't have police officers with their firearms and say who they are. I just kind of think there's a paradox in that.
Yeah, and plus you've the detail, right? You have a whole uniform detail that's providing security, and that's okay too, right? So, if that's the case, how about we withdraw all the police officers and you hire private security to watch the parade? But no, but that's okay. So yeah, I mean, the parade organizers are doing, just blanketing just because you're a police officer, it's wrong. It's definitely wrong. And it's what you think that's what I would say pride themselves on, is that you should be able to be yourself, right? and do and you who you are. So if you're a police officer, all right, and if you're a gay or a lesbian police officer or transgendering police officer, hey, you're still a police officer, right? That's your profession, and you can march with that organization. I mean, this is the goal organization, right? So you're marching with the gay organization that's within the NYPD. It's not like you're not taking the the Pulaskis and marching with the Pulaskis in the parade. No, you're marching with the police officers and that particular organization that identifies you as a gay or a lesbian officer. So I don't know. I think, but I also definitely think there's some politics to it. I think definitely Jessica Tisch has some some saying that. I think it was politicized, maybe to show support or whatever. It was a show to the officers. The support is good to the officers, but in the fact that you put it in the limelight, I mean, I just think that it has some other stuff. So somebody asked if my wife was okay with that big hug. I think it was QC, and she was good. She was good with it. Say QCB says, "Does your wife approve of that message, Chief? The big hug." Yeah, she doesn't give me hugs as good as that. So when she gives me hugs as good as that, then I won't tell that story anymore.
That was a very memorable hug. I mean, you've mentioned it several times. So
I know, I was touched.
It was interesting too when we started prepping for the show. Like that was the first thing that came up. So that picture has been on hand. So if anybody wants to know, he's probably just, oh, there's my picture. Yeah, listen.
I'm going to try to get wallet size so I can give them out.
I think you need to put that on your back wall.
There you go, right here.
Shout out to Pat Giordano. He always talks about you dressing and decorating your wall. So there we go. We got the picture. Pat, if you approve, I want to make sure you approve. We're going to put that picture on the back wall. What do we got? We got a lot of topics going on.
Yep.
What do you want to hit? I know we got a lot of stuff going on here.
I think we touched a little bit with Madry, right? So now we have the Lieutenant Headley, right? So she gets caught up in this sexual harassment. I think she actually makes a sexual harassment complaint against what I would consider her victim, and she ends up getting if you look at Sal Greco, if you go on Sal Greco and watch his one of his podcasts a couple of days ago, he gives a great breakdown. But she ends up getting transferred and also demoted. And I think some of the backstory there was that she has, what I was told, 2 prior EEO complaints against her. One which I think was already substantiated. So I believe she was still on probation at the time. So she immediately got, she got, her rank was taken from her. She was brought back down to sergeant and transferred. So I think, but there was some notoriety that she may have been appointed by not appointed, but brought up to the building by Madry, right? She has prior ties with Madry. So, I mean, to me, this seems like a systematic problem across the board that people think they can get away with this, and that, try to hurt the woman that made the actual complaint. There was an actual, like a EEO complaint made against the victim, almost like a retaliation type of complaint. And and I do that, supervisors have, 5 days to make that report once we're notified about it. And there should be no retaliation. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that there's a systematic problem, or maybe they cut the head of the snake off, but the snake is still wiggling, in my opinion,
I gotta laugh. I'm gonna stay on topic, but I gotta laugh at these comments. Nike Head 27 that says these two buy shirts from the same spot, and then Ron Layson follows up saying that we're twinning. We didn't do this at all on purpose. It's funny. It's the same day from doing it this morning with John. But I was like, let me change my T-shirt, and sure enough, it worked out perfect, right? This is an interesting case, right? And here's why I think this case is so interesting. So it solidifies what I've been saying about the NYPD being a 3-tiered system. I'm going to say that often. There is a 3-tiered system. Tier 1 is your upper echelon. That's the job. People say the job. Those are the people that run the job, chief of department. Then you have your Tier 2. Those are the people that are tied to the nepotism. And then, of course, Tier 3 is your general population. So this case encompasses what I've been talking about is Tier 2, people that have the right connections. So from the scuttlebutt I've heard so far, Healy has a direct line connection to Caban, and which connects to Madry and into Eric Adams. And I hear that the other female in this case has a connection to Kinsella. So that makes it quite interesting. And from what I've heard, digging around, making some phone calls, that this was a relationship that was volatile for a long period of time. I again, this is just information I heard. I can't validate it, but what I've heard, and that one police plaza was very well aware of it, but didn't take any action. So the fact that they took action now, this knee-jerk reaction because it got involved in the media, says a lot. But it shows the different reaction again, just like the firemen. Same thing here. The reaction was this lieutenant was demoted, and yet Madry retired and went off to bliss. Again, hypocrisy, right? And this female, from what I heard, is in the right connections, but this got out in the media, and Tish had to take action. So what else is interesting about that is I always say it's pretty much impossible to prove or disprove these cases. But what we do see here is a potential pattern, right? This lieutenant has several allegations from women that are independent from each other at different times at work at different locations. So obviously there could be a problem. So the question I have is, with Jessica Tish as the police commissioner, what are we doing? What are the ramifications and what are the policies? What is the job doing to prevent these sexual harassment cases? You were chief. What did you see then? What was being done and what is being done now? Because I don't see them doing anything. Clearly, there's a problem with sexual deviancy within the police department, and it's not being addressed.
Yeah, no, I think it is definitely a systematic problem, and I don't think any administration right now has really gotten a good handle of it and curtailed it. I mean, right? So there's that one. I don't know if it's a written rule or unwritten rule. Like if you're dating somebody in your command, right? You can't be in the same command. You have to want somebody. If you tell the CO, hey, I'm dating, Shane. I'm dating Shane, and she's in squad B1. I'm in C2, but we're dating. Okay, great. One of you have to get transferred, right? Because they don't want you to have that tie in the particular command. But you know what? Often that's even overlooked, right? Because if you don't tell anybody, you don't say anything, nobody really is the wiser until somebody really catches up on it. So, things like this, obviously, mandatory reporting, but it's only as good as if somebody reports it, So if you don't know about it, and in this case, I think the victim, she may have felt retaliation from the lieutenant. She may have been scared to lose her position. So there's a lot of factors that are put in play on whether or not you're actually going to report it. Because once you report it, everybody knows about it. Because there's there's no confidentiality at all in the police department, no matter what. Somebody finds out and it filters down. Everybody finds out about it, and then it has to be dealt with. What's the answer? I don't know. I truthfully don't know. You have to take it case by case, and you have to, I think, aggressively handle it when it happens. You can't just sit back and say everything's okay. And what really would have gave a great indication and a great lesson is if Madry got fired for what he did, his outrageous actions. He should have been fired, terminated. You know what? All right. I know there's that civil service law that he'll still get his a pension or whatever, but you know what? Fire him. That's it. So I think what Sal's given us new information. He's got Ron. I can report that there is also a new victim in the 5-2 Headley last command. She is the female Madry who abuses women, and there's more of that story to come. Yeah. So like I said, Sal did a great job, but yeah, I wouldn't doubt it, right? You see that it's often a predator, right, or whatever, that it continues. Just like with domestic violence, right? You have that cycle of violence. So yeah, I could definitely see that, and I think that's why there was an immediate demotion. But again, I go back to Madry. What do you think with Madry? Madry skated out of there with nothing wrong, and everybody else took the hit.
So I think that this doesn't solve anything, right? So we talk about what's the procedures, what's the protocol for the NYPD to take. And to me, it's about preemptive measures. What are the preemptive measures the police department is taking to prevent predators or potential predators, right? These cases, especially in these cases, because they're extremely tough to prove or disprove. So if you don't have preemptive measures, how do you stop it and how do you rectify it? So her being demoted, this doesn't fix the problem within the NYPD, right? If there are other potential predators, and that's woman, male or female, with a heterosexual or homosexual relation. It doesn't matter. The point is, it goes back to what I'm saying, is these separate tiers in the police department in different standards. Because if this is general population, it gets handled much differently. The arm of law in the police department is much heavier. But because there are ties to the upper echelon and there's nepotism here, it's not handled. So it goes back to when, which I think is a great segment. If our friends and listeners, check it out. John Scola, who's an attorney in New York City, was on Sal Greco's show. And he explained it so well of what goes on in the police department. They don't try to fix the root causes. They don't try to fix the problem. They just make payouts so they can just keep playing. And that's what they're doing. They're running a sorority, a frat house at one police plaza within the NYPD. They're not putting a stop to it. Sal has been getting a lot of information on this. His eye and his ear to the ground. He's got some great sources on this. And apparently there's more women coming out. And again, I say it, really tough to prove or disprove, right? Unless you have some damning text messages and video. But it's what are the preemptive measures to stop this? What is the police department doing to just cut out this cancer that's within the upper echelon? And the first thing is this. When the upper echelon, especially under Chief Madry, former Chief Madry, and there's no reaction, well, leadership is a reflection of what goes on and trickles down to the boots on the ground and the rank and file. And it was never handled properly. So I'm sure there's other issues within the police department. And ultimately, this comes down to the taxpayer is going to have to pay. So this demotion, to me, is just it's a flash. It's a show to the public. It's, again, virtue signaling, but it doesn't fix the problem.
No, I agree. And you know what? I mean, does she deserve the promotion? Well, she was on probation, and now she's caught up in this. So, I mean, if she was found. I think she was found guilty in one of the cases. So, yeah, I could see a demotion. But then you look at Madry, like you said. You look at Banks. You look at everybody else from Pearson, all that administration. There's a history of this, right? So. If Madry can skate out like he skates with nothing, like Reed was saying, how about taking his good guy letter or something, do anything, but no, he just skates out. You don't even hear about it, right? He just kind of skates out the door. Then it filters down, and everybody sees that. So yeah, I mean there should be something, but again, who's his buddy? Eric Adams, right? So Look at this. I mean, taxpayers on the hook for $300,000 for so far for Adam's aid, and that's relative to Timmy Pearson. And then Timmy Pearson was a problem when he was on the job. So I mean, why would he not be when he got off?
What a hell of a pick, right, Rob? The guy was a disaster on the job, and then Eric Adams puts him, in such a high prolific position, and he's cost the city almost $1 billion, and it's not even done.
Yeah. I mean, I'll talk about that a little later, but the qualified immunity, right? That's something that you guys did a phenomenal job today with Curtis Leewell. I mean, I was great interview, you and John. I mean, I was glued to the screen, and really, like I think you could talk better about it, but he really inspired me, Curtis, because he gave an in-depth view of him. I think you asked some really, really great questions, like, what else is, other than politics and stuff, what else does he do? But the insight to what he has, and the potential that he has to offer to the city was phenomenal. I mean, you guys did an outstanding job. I mean, I can't praise it enough. I mean, how'd you feel about that interview today, Eric? I mean,
I'm so glad you brought that up. I was blown. Excuse me. I was blown away today, right? And I have to admit, I always liked Curtis, but I thought he was just a showman. And that's why it's so great having this long-form platform to speak to him on this level. And I said, wow, he is a showman, but he also is a real New Yorker, that he's the man for the job, right? We need real leadership, and he's not afraid to take leadership. And at the end, he got choked up, and I saw it was authentic and real. And I said, wow, this guy, he's really on top of everything. And then his explanation of why he wears the beret blew me away. I had a new profound respect. It was I was really impressed. And he's 71 years old. His energy is like,
Yeah.
wow. I was like, I hope I can keep up with this guy. You know, it was really, really impressive.
Yeah, when I found out he was 71, I was like, "What?" I was shocked, and but he's energetic. He's out there. They said he was on the trains every day, and nobody else is taking the trains, right? Even in this in the times today, we don't nobody wants to take the trains 'cause it's so dangerous. But hey, relatively crime's down in the city, right? That's what we heard today. Everybody's touting the crimes are down and stuff like that. I don't know where they're hiding the bodies, but there's probably one train with like all these bodies on it, and they're just circling around the two line or whatever. But yeah, no, I mean it was a phenomenal interview. If anybody in our audience in the chat hasn't seen it, you got to go back and view that. I know he had a lot of people watching that live. So and I think everybody should get behind him and show your support because I think he's the savior, right? He's the one that's gonna help the city. Nobody else is. So, but
I
I
think there's
I
a great. Yeah,
go
sorry. Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, no,
No,
no. Go ahead.
I just think this comment is so cool. What's her name says, so Eric, how are we going to get the rest of New York to know how great Curtis is and answer all these questions? Are they small sound bites from what you did today? How can we get them on another platform? Great question. I think this is why we see this movement with podcasts that are really starting to get leverage on your mainstream media, these sound bites. You get it, and we need more podcasts. That's what we need. And that's what we're giving you here, right? On the Finest
Yeah.
Unfiltered Network, you got myself and John doing New York's Finest Unfiltered Podcast. Rob, you and Ron do a great job doing the executive perspective. Then you got the Sal Greco show. And we have Jack behind the scenes. You know, he's young. He's 28 years old with his perspective, right? Which is great. And then we have our new show with Pete Forselli. Awesome, by the way. Welcome
Yeah.
aboard from ATF, former NYPD, Tom Joyce, gentlemen. Both these guys bring great leadership. They had a pilot episode. That's what we need. We need to get Curtis on all these shows and let people see here's a guy that's not just a showman. He's charismatic and he's intelligent. I was blown away. I like what he had to say today. I really did. It was super cool, man. I was like, oh, you know what? Wow, I can just listen to this guy all day. So
Yeah. No, he was like you say all the time, spot on, right? He and spot on. Yeah, all his intelligence and he like every question he answered firmly and he followed it. I remember like I think you may have asked him a two-part question and he went for the first part and then he answered the second part, so he's paying attention and he cares about it. I mean, and I think that's what shows the most is his caring and his love for the city. So I mean, I think you can go on the Finest Unfiltered podcast and look that up. And if anybody hasn't seen that, you gotta watch that. He was phenomenal on that. But I see that Mandami he got endorsed by a union already. So not any of the police unions, but he already got some unions backing him up. So I mean I don't understand how he can get people to unions to back him like this, where everything we've seen and everything that he's put out, we know doesn't work. It's only a bite to get the younger votes because he's going to give free stuff away. And nothing's free, right? We always say this: nothing's free in this world. You always end up paying for it. So I mean, just the fact that he's getting some sort of endorsements is surprising to me. You talk about what the John had put out earlier today, about him getting put back on the job and things like that, and all that stuff that Adams is trying to get unions to back him. But you can see in this article, the unions are all flipping to Mandami, and I just don't know why they don't have the right people that in their agency or in their unions to say, hey, this is not the guy that's going to give us job security and create things. So John spoke about getting back pay, or no back pay. I'm sorry, maybe reinstate I wasn't sure if they were even going to compensate, but seems to be like another ploy by Eric Adams to maybe stay in close proximity to Modami and say, hey, I'll get these unions to back him. I mean, what's your thought about the unions that are just kind of like, throwing their weight behind them right now? And then what Eric Adams is trying to do to get the unions behind him.
I think comment here for Patrick Donahue. I think Pat nails it. Yep. 32 BJ endorses on. The true power brokers are now leaving Cuomo to endorse back Adams so they can maintain their under. I just lost this comment. Here we go. So they can maintain under the table dominance over New York City politics. These comments are flying in. Sorry, by the way. And I think that's a great comment. I think that's really what this comes down to is what is the vested interest with the unions? And this is why I say it's scary at this point. No longer do I see our voting process as democratic. I mean, the wealthy individuals and wealthy organizations that have special interest push the money in the city for what direction they want it to go, because who benefits? And who do the unions benefit from? Do they benefit from Sliwa? Do they benefit from Mamdani or Eric Adams? If you ask me, Mamdani and Eric Adams, that's one and the same. You're getting the same thing. These unions are a major disappointment when it comes to that. There's no doubt about it. What is their vested interest?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. And they don't realize that it's not in their best interest, the union leaders, all they care about is what they're going to get, what perks they're going to get. And it's not really what they care for the membership. I mean, you remember when they asked, right, when Trump was running, what was the DEA, right, took a vote and said, who do you want us to endorse? And when they got their answer that they didn't want, they decided we're not going to endorse anybody, right? So, I mean, we know there's, I mean, I thought that was a great thing that they did, but they should have done it and carried through with it. They stopped it where they didn't get the right answer. And, that to me is crazy. I mean, so I don't know if any other unions, I think that's the only one that endorsed them so far, Madami, but I could see other ones going in there because, it is, what I believe, it's unfortunate that they look and they project who they think is going to win. And that's how they decide they're going to endorse. They never endorsed on the policies and what the person is going to present to the city. They only endorse that so that they get whatever kickbacks or whatever favoritism they get later on. It's just, it's a sad thing that these unions, and you know what, the unions, it's our money, right? We're the ones that pay the union dues. For a while, the CEA every year, even as a retiree, I pay dues, and they would ask for a donation to the Political Action Committee. So who they were going to give money to some candidate. Well, tell you the truth, I want to hear what candidate you're going to give it to first before I start giving money over to the union and say here, and then you endorse. I could see them endorsing if they think Madami's going to win, and they don't want to endorse Curtis. Then it's going to go to Adams or somebody else. It's just going to be a waste of money, So
the major problem with the unions also is actual ability to vote and how much stake do they have in these votes, right? I mean, you look at the police department. The NYPD is comprised of 1/3 of the membership actually resides in the city, including union members. So how much stake do we really have in this vote? And that goes along with the other unions also, right? Because if you're working for a city agency, how much funding or how much is your salary you can afford to actually live in the 5 boroughs? So for the most part, we have a majority of our city workforce living outside the city, not having much of a say. But the part that I used to find problematic and I didn't like, and I was a union delegate, and we would have these meetings, and it was always a conversation when it came to political endorsements was, well, yes, this person's a Democrat, and they don't necessarily support the police, but we're going to endorse them because we don't have friends in Albany, and we need to show that we care because if they get elected, we're on an island on our own. And I would say to myself, like, we're on an island on our own anyway. Does it make a difference? But yet we're going to give this person 50, 75,000, and they're just going to disregard the police anyway. So why get rid? If that's the case, just take that 75,000, throw it in the toilet. We don't have any friends in Albany either way. Why don't we take a shot and actually endorse someone that actually supports police in New York City? Anyway, I had a major problem with that, and that is the theme of the unions, particularly within the NYPD. That goes for all the unions.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, where their endorsement is just going to, who they think or who's going to be, not for the betterment of the job, not for the betterment of the officers there. I mean, if I see that the unions endorse Madami, I think they're out of their mind, because he's already said that he's going to keep, he's not going to hire anybody. He's going to keep them at the current level of staffing that they have now. So what does that do? That, first of all, you don't hire anybody, right? So you use the young guys coming on, young girls coming on the job. It stagnates the ranks, right? So every rank's going to get stagnant. You're not going to get detectives grade, only based on retirement. Same thing with sergeants all the way up. So they really should, pick who they think is the best candidate and get behind them. And you're right, a lot of people don't live in the city, but you know what? A lot of people have family that live in the city too, though. So I mean, my wife's family still lives in the Bronx, and in Brooklyn. So there's people in there, and if the unions don't endorse the right people, then I'll go against the union. Then I'm going to say that no, that's not the person that's actually good for the city. It's not good for you. This is who you should be voting for. So, but yeah, I mean, just to give shell out money, and so that maybe years ago it was a hopeful that they get a good contract, right? They'd give whoever candidate think is going to win, and give them as much money or whatever, endorse them in the hopes that they would get a fair contract. And you know what? A lot of them never got fair contracts, right? So, I mean, everybody was mad at, I think, with Giuliani. QC Beast again is saying right now, Giuliani, he got all our support. Everybody supported him. And then he gave zeros for heroes, so you just never know. So I don't know. I don't know what's your final thought on that. If we can move on to the next topic or whatever. But what do you think?
I think a lot of people have this misconception and don't really understand the pensions. And if you look back, this whole idea under Pat Lynch was that there wouldn't be any zeros. But all those years without a contract, to me, they are zeros. Even if you get your retro, and then it starts 3 months after the pension. I'm sorry, the contract kicks in. That's 3 months of zeros. And over time, over 20 years under Pat Lynch, that's compounded interest that you lost. So sometimes you do have to take a zero to put you ahead. Sometimes you have to go back. I don't think these contracts were sold. I mean, they're sold to believe that you're not getting zeros, but in many ways you look at it, it's a lot of negative equity for the police officers in their pension of interest they lost. I think we nailed it. There's so much information here when you talk about this issue here. It's just, and the hypocrisy with the police department. All these things that we have talked about definitely will compound into the main topic of why I should stay or should I go. But it's very important we discuss the unions. The unions, really, that's the ones who should have got involved. When we talk about the Pride Parade, it should have been the fraternal organizations and the unions. That's the ones who should have been the voice for the police officers, and to keep the police department apolitical.
Right, absolutely, I agree. And before we get into, and we're going to talk about it shortly, that should I stay or should I go? Another factor which I feel could have the potential to determine whether or not people should stay or should I go is vehicle pursuits, right? So we've saw a horrific vehicle pursuit that led from the Bronx into Manhattan. I think you guys broke down the video. Ron and I broke it down, where the individual comes down, it has an accident. The two officers in the RMP, the Radio Motor Patrol car, come down. They see the accident. or suspect that they must have seen the accident and make the turn to the left and veer away from it, and the individual ends up dying. I think just recently there was another vehicle pursuit, they said, in the Bronx, where the individual was pulled over for equipment violation. When the officers approached, the individual took off, and I think it was in the Bruckner in the 4-1 precinct by Hunts Point Avenue. And when the vehicle took off, accelerated at a high rate and ended up, crashing into a couple cars and crashing into pedestrians on the sidewalk. And they also, I think one of them also ended up getting seriously injured. So now you have Letitia James, our Attorney General, talking about wanting to come up with a law to terminate vehicle pursuits, like almost, take care of them, stop them altogether. Yet, I think the department has a pretty good policy on vehicle pursuits. I don't think it's been followed, and that's because of Shell, right? We know that Shell, Daughtry, and his CRT teams were like, let's go chase, get everybody. Shell said it won't be tolerated in this city anymore, and it's developed a culture of I can pursue. So I don't know what you were lieutenant, obviously there. Did you terminate pursuits? Did you let them go on? What's your thoughts on vehicle pursuits in general?
I'm so glad you brought this up, right? This is a great topic. And I just want to preface this with being honest and Rob, I hope you would say the same thing. I think vehicle pursuits are one of the scenarios that take the most extreme discipline on the job. Because no matter how many times we podcast or talk about this, if I attempt to pull someone over and they take off, I'm taking off after them. And I think that's every one of us. It takes extreme discipline for your partner or the other people around you to tell you to stop. It's very hard to stop yourself. So I'm not going to lie. I've been involved in pursuits myself. Not at the alarming rate that we see now.
Right.
But I've been involved in pursuits myself. I've stopped. I've terminated them. I've had them terminated for me. This is one of those things that you need. They say it takes a village to raise a child. You need an entire police department to maintain discipline because we all, Rob, you and I can talk about this right now. If you and I were working together and someone takes off, after we give this whole conversation, we're taking off after him.
Right,
it's going to take, Big Ron listening to the radio or someone else working with us to call it off. And even with your rank, it's just in your nature. You're a cop. So I think it takes maintain extreme discipline. So the fact that we have verbiage from the chief of department at the time, Chief Patrol, John Shell, to promote and motivate this crime-fighting tactic has created this problem that we have. So the question is this. Did the police department take action to rectify it, or are they still promoting it, but giving the information to the media that they've rectified it? So which one is it? Are they giving an illusion, hey, we rectified it, but really it's still going on? And to me, I think it's something that's still being promoted, but they're telling the police department and telling the public that, hey, this is the patrol guy procedure, and if our police officers take action, they're going to be disciplined. And it's scary at the point that eventually the Attorney General is going to step in, and I see it throughout the entire country. There are police officers that are serving close to life sentences. This is scary stuff, and it takes an entire police department to support each other to not engage in this crime-fighting tactic unless an extreme, exceptional circumstance.
Yeah, I totally agree with you 100%. If you and I were in the radio car and somebody took off, it's game on, right? We're gonna follow and go as fast as we can because it's a cat and mouse game. It's good guys versus bad guys, and we're not in the position to lose, right? That's as police officers, we want to win. And how do we win? We want to either give you a ticket, give you a summons, or put you in jail because you did something wrong, right? That's our job. So yeah, I've been involved with many pursuits, and there was ways that we work in the every platoon's different, right? So work in the midnight was a little easier for us to do pursuits because we had a little technique. So what we normally would do is the first thing we would do is a car came up 1016, which means stolen. Right. So you run the plate, it comes up 1016, it's stolen. Whether you did it on the mobile digital computer in the car or you put it over the radio, if you it was so funny when like you would put it over the radio and Central, the radio dispatcher would go, Sector Adam, are you holding? So you knew it was stolen right there, right? All right, I got one because they wouldn't care if you weren't, right? So yeah, we're following Central. So he goes, yeah, it's coming back 1016, means it's stolen. So we would put the turret lights on right away because when you put the turret lights on, that individual in the car in front of you knows it's that you're on to them. So we would follow and just follow, just pretend. I would pretend I'm talking to my partner. Hey, drink a cup of coffee if you had it in the car. So if the guy's looking in the rearview mirror, it gave the deception of, hey, these idiots behind me have no clue that I'm in a stolen car. And then what we do is hold the radio in our lap and go, hey, Sector Adam, Sector Boy, meet us over here. And then guys would swarm in and we'd block the car in. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But when the car took off, we'd all take off after it. But you know that if you put it over, every supervisor is gonna terminate it. That was the automatic. If they could get on the radio, right? Remember everybody would like start keying the mic, so you'd be like 4-1 Sergeant to Central, and everybody would be keying the mic. You couldn't even get through. But you'd have to terminate it. Why? Because you had to protect the cops and you had to protect civilians. You had to protect the perpetrator too, right? Because you don't want them to have an accident and get killed or whatever. So yeah. So you had to do all of that. But now, to me, it was just like it was craziness. Like when the chief of department puts that out there, and Kaz Daughtry and his team start doing it, and everybody else sees it, then it's everybody knew that it was okay. Just do it and go with it. And it led into bad things. I don't even know how many people would even have terminated pursuits now anymore because they probably felt it was okay. But at this point, when you start talking about, like you just mentioned, if the attorney general gets involved, then you start talking about is there going to be a law? Is there going to be is there going to be criminality with it? And if you do initiate a pursuit and it ends up in an accident, is it going to be like now you're on trial, just like it is now when police use a firearm, right? You have the attorney general also investigating whether that force was justified. So to me, the writing's on the wall. I don't think this is something that anybody should be doing right now because it's not safe for you or anybody else, and especially if the attorney general gets involved. I think that's really bad because we saw what laws do, right? We saw the diaphragm law. We saw all those different laws that completely annihilate the police officers. So I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I know I went on a tangent there, but it's just because I think it diminishes the power of the police officers again. It's just, and I understand the termination of it and then not allowing a pursuit, but I just think that you start bringing in the attorney general and things like that, it's gonna send a bad message to every cop.
Well, I hope Ron is still watching because I want to say, hey, that was Rob's longest segment ever so far, and that's because there's room to talk today. So no, I'm just kidding, Ron. We got to break his chops. But Reed makes a great comment here. He says, unfortunately, some bosses with no patrol experience will terminate just so they don't have to answer questions. Now you're right. This is a mixed bag when it comes to pursuits. Sometimes extreme, and I mean extreme circumstances. Someone is actively shooting at people, or some kid has just been kidnapped. And these just circumstances, could be others, that you have to pursue that car no matter what. Because ultimately, does the risk outweigh the reward? Because I always said, please, I would tell my people around me, please stop me. If I get involved in a pursuit, and I'll do the same for you, because I don't want to run over, God forbid, a 5-year-old kid, because I can't live with that. And the reality is what's going on in the city. If you do apprehend that perpetrator, that person of interest, that subject, for one, are they actually going to administer charges from the DA's office? Are they going to decline to prosecute anyway? What are you chasing them for? Where is this going? Are they getting bail? They're not getting bail. They're going to be let out right away. So the burden is on you. But this comes down to leadership. And it tells me that this crime fighting tactic is still being pushed within the police department. And if it's not, it's still a cancer that fermented when John Shell was pushing it, and it's still there. And it's still very prevalent. And it's sad because the police officers, their hearts are in the right place. And I know I was there. You were there. It is extremely hard. I know active retired police officers, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Friends, listeners, if you're a police enthusiast or just you were never interested in police, it's very hard to not pursue a car. I mean, your job is to catch the bad guy. It's extremely defeating to let that bad guy just go. But in today's era, especially, look, if we compare it to the incident with the firemen, it's not necessarily about policy. It's about politics and optics. And you're fighting optics. And to fight optics is extremely tough. But to the point where now police officers throughout the entire country are losing not just their careers, but they're losing their lives and they're going to jail. So again, it takes a village to raise a child. We need the entire police department to police each other and to maintain that radio discipline and say, you know what? Don't pursue. And you're right, Reed. There are some circumstances. There are some times you have to. But if, rhetorically speaking, out of 100 potential car chases, what do we think the percentage would be that we should pursue? It's probably 1%. It's probably very low. So just guessing, probably 99 times out of 100, we need each other to say, cut it.
I remember we had a rooftop burglar in the 4-1, and he jumped off the roof. I thought he probably broke both of his legs, but as he jumped off the roof, I saw him land, and then he took off running. So we come down and we find him hiding, and he takes off on us again. So we put it over the radio, and the sergeant, who was a real shaky sergeant, he terminates the foot pursuit. Like, how do you terminate a foot pursuit? Come on, man. You know, it's. I mean, what's next? Really? I mean, is that what's next? Is it going to terminate foot pursuits? I don't know. That guy killed me. But yeah. So I agree. You know what? You need somebody to. Your adrenaline's flowing, right? If you and I are in the radio car and the guy takes off us on, both of our adrenaline is flowing. So we're not thinking about terminating or doing anything else. We want to get that guy. But you do need somebody else to step in and say, "Hey, all right, terminate it. It's dangerous. You know, it's the middle of the day, or it's low end of the 4 to 12. Let's terminate this." And more than likely, when you think about it, you don't want to hear that. Like, I don't want to hear terminate. You get pissed off, right? Well, the guy's got no balls or whatever. I can't believe they terminated my pursuit. But in reality, it's probably a good thing. So. Yeah, I mean, I know, Jack. If you put up that other thing, there was I forget what town it's from, what state, but they actually put in Rhode Island, right? They actually put in the order anything over 15 miles an hour of the speed limit is considered a pursuit. Could you imagine that?
I could Rob, you could probably run faster than 15 miles an hour.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Look, high-speed pursuit. If you went down the FDR on a good day when there's no traffic, every car there would be a pursuit. Oh, I mean, I just hope that yeah, I just hope that that it doesn't get to your attorney generals, that that it stays within the patrol guide procedure. I think maybe more education to the supervisors, maybe more understanding to the cops and stuff, because I don't want to see cops get in trouble either. So.
I mean, I think that's they're telling you with that procedure, right? They're telling you it's very indicative. They're basically saying don't do it, and they're saying that any time that you stop a car, I mean, if you just think about it, if you put your turret lights on to stop a car, I would say most likely, especially in New York City, where the speed limit is 25 on streets, most likely they're already doing close to 25 miles an hour or more. So
Right.
is that a pursuit right there and then? So what it's saying at this point is that every vehicle stop you're involved in, this is from my observation, that you're already being monitored, and that if anything goes wrong, you're going to be held liable, and they're going to use the weight of it and say it's a pursuit. And unfortunately, in this profession, discipline has been so heavily weighed, that it's not just discipline anymore. The fear. This is the fear that I have, and I know eventually will segue into why you should stay where you should go. But this is the fear that before, yes, you had to worry about getting fired, civil liability, but now you have to worry not even getting a little stint in jail, but going to prison for life. And your life
Yeah.
is over.
Yeah.
It is done, kaput, finished. You're done. You're painted as a monster forever. I mean, all the stacks and chips are against you. If you get civilian complaints, those are going to be on your record till death. If you go to jail for doing your work as a cop, you're done. Your life is over. So the day you put on this uniform and become a police officer in a blue city in America, you're closer to jail yourself. And look at Rhode Island. That's a liberal state itself. Look
Yeah.
where these policies are implemented in this country.
No, you're right. When you do it, you do a search. It is more of those Democrat-run states, that institute this policy of not letting you pursue. And if that does come into play here, I mean, I would strongly suggest that you don't pursue, because just the fact that it's even hard to apprehend somebody because of the diaphragm law and a few other things that you have to restrict the way you take somebody down. So I mean, once you start putting law in front of this, and like we said earlier, and we'll talk about it a little further, you take away that qualified immunity, you're going to end up getting sued, and you're going to put yourself in harm's way. So is it really worth it? So
What
I just
about,
want to go
look
ahead.
at it. I'm just
I was
curious in your career, right? Especially at the rank of deputy chief, but at your time in a command, and I believe I remember you saying you were an XO in different commands, right? And
Yeah.
usually traffic stat falls under the XO. How did you handle, if you had any? Did you have any pursuits that you remember particularly that you had to respond to, or any of those? You had to go to those meetings, right? For traffic stat, for vehicle pursuits. There's a board, right, that determines if the police officers acted properly. How did you handle those cases, like when it came to pursuits, if you had any? Like, what were your thoughts? What did you look for to determine appropriate or inappropriate? Because Ron Mason always talks about mistakes of the heart and mistakes of the
right.
mind. How did you look at those things in your capacity?
Well, I think because I was fairly active as a police officer, so I knew that it was hard to pull yourself back from a situation, whether you were pursuing or not, and then I would look at, what was the specific, you know, crime that they committed or violation, and whether or not, I felt that I would do it. I put myself in that position. I think that that was the best way to understand and manage how the police officer felt. What were they pursuing for? How far did it go? And then what was the result of it? Was it just an accident, which nobody wants? Or was there an injury that could have been prevented, or there may have been an injury that wasn't preventable? So you could have an RMP accident go into a 911 call, right? So I mean, these things happen. So I would take it and look at. I mean, I just hate the terminology totality of the circumstances, because I think it's overused. But I would look at everything and then see if I was in those shoes, how would I have reacted, and if I felt the same way. And then when I was a patrol supervisor, or a platoon commander, I'd let I would let the pursuit go on for a little while, just to get an idea of it, how far is it going to go, and then you could tell by the individual's voice on the radio, how fast it was going, and you could tell whether or not it needed to be terminated, and then if it need be, I would terminate it, and that's sometimes you would terminate it, and the cops still continued on, because I remember guys be like, oh, I would terminate the pursuit, and they'd be like, okay, no, yeah, Sector Adam, we received pursuit terminated. Central would give you a time or whatever, and then maybe 2 or 3 minutes later, Central, while on patrol, we just came across this accident over here. It would be the same car that was involved in a pursuit. So, hey, if it worked on the radio, it worked for me. But that's how I would handle. I would try to put myself in the individuals in their shoes, and not criticize. They're doing police work, and you like you've said numerous times, it's inherently dangerous, So it's not always pretty, right? So.
No, it's not. And I would say this. I was involved in a couple of pursuits, not many, and I learned, thank God, nothing bad happened, but I learned not to chase those scooters, because a couple of times chasing those scooters, that is scary stuff. First of all, the scooters, they go, or motorcycles too, they go crazy. They get on the sidewalk. It's very hard to follow them. You'll end up in an accident yourself. But many times what happens is they end up crashing, and it's pretty bad for them. And ultimately, at this point, especially with the lens right now, you're the one that's held responsible. But the problem I have with this crime-fighting tactic and the push by John Schell to motivate police officers for this as a crime-fighting tactic is this. And this is what I always say. Leadership in the NYPD, especially from commanding officers in that billet and above, I always say that they're guests. If they're working at a particular command, they're there for maybe 3 years, a year and a half. They're a guest. And the cops that are there, the frontline supervisors, the boots on the ground, they're the permanent resident. So if that guest comes in and stirs up the pot, and they get involved in all this crazy stuff, and when they leave, those police officers and frontline supervisors are left with the investigations. And the upper echelon and the leadership in those cases is not there for them when the time comes, especially in this. And this is why I was trying to forewarn the cops in the khaki pants. Yes, you got that blanket protection right now. You got John Schell and Kaz Daughtry, and they got the ear to the chest. They have the ear of Eric Adams. But Eric Adams may not be reelected. And even after that, if you keep that tactic, you may still be on the hook, because eventually these cases might start to get out when you don't have that blanket of protection anymore. And that's why I was trying to forewarn them. But unfortunately, and I get it, they're loyal right now to John Schell and Kaz Daughtry because they're in the thick of it and they're not seeing the whole big picture. They're blinded by the amenities and by the treatment they're getting at this point.
No, absolutely. And John Schell, right, when he was chief of patrol, was go, 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 go. And then when he became chief of department, he was like, well, we're going to terminate no more pursuits and everything else. So, like you said, you're good when you're here, and then you're a guest, and then you step into the next position, and then you will now turn around and criticize the previous. I'm sure he's telling Phil Rivera, hey, you better make sure there's no pursuits, because and be like, oh, you just told us it was okay to pursue. So, and the same thing, like you said, in a precinct, when a CO comes in, right? It's like, all right, do this, 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 and this. And you're like, all right. And, for a little while, you pretend to do it or whatever. But everybody knows you kind of continue the way you're doing it all along. And eventually the CO gets his bump or whatever and moves on. And then the command continues, and the boots on the ground continue to do the same work that they've always been doing all along, right? So, but yeah, I could see easily that a guy leaves a position, and the people behind are the ones that get the hit, right? That's what happens. You look at, I hate going back to it, but Madry's office, right? You talk about the deputy chief up there was signing the overtime slips. He got whacked, right? Madry leaves. So yeah, that happens all the time. It's not it's not a good thing. So
what's the moral of the story? Don't sign the slips. Get someone else to sign them. You sign them. It's crazy though, right? Like how far we come, because I remember, on the job, and I don't agree with this, and I'm sure you could probably give your perspective on this, but there were many many police accident reports that were filled out where cops were involved in accidents, and legitimately, it was not the cops' fault. And I'm not talking about pursuits. I'm just talking about accidents cops were involved in. And I always saw this kind of blanket decision throughout the job, the overwhelming majority. There are outliers, and I saw it myself, Ron Layson, who stepped outside the pack and actually made a decision. And I could only imagine you're the same way. But I've seen plenty of bosses that, well, the cop is at fault because no matter what, if the cop was involved in an accident, he's at fault because it's easy, or she. And I think that's just completely wrong. And I remember one time, Julie Morrill, who was another one that got promoted by Rocket Fuel. She was my XO in PSA 7. Woo, that was interesting. But two of my police officers were responding to a gun run, and they got into an accident. It was not their fault. And I got reamed out the next day of why I didn't ground them. And I said, well, these police officers did it. For one, they took the initiative. They went to a gun run. It was not their fault. It was the other driver. I analyzed the incident. And I just got reamed that, screamed that no matter what, it was their fault. And she pulled me, showed me the street, the way that the crest and what they could see. It was the most ridiculous thing. But the bottom line is the police officers never got the benefit of the doubt. They were not at fault. There are other drivers that sometimes, sometimes police officers are at fault, but sometimes they're not. What was your take on that? Did you see that yourself, that sometimes this blanket like perception of cops?
Yeah, because you know what the problem is traffic stop, right? So you go down there and they talk about department vehicle accidents. And then they look at it as like, well, why is this guy not at fault? And why is this and that? So they put you on the carpet. So yeah, it's easy to do the blanket thing and say, yeah, the cop's at fault, the cop's at fault. But I would go against it myself. I said, when you're doing those accident review boards, you got to say, all right, well, where was the cop going? Was he just driving along and then, he rear-ended somebody, unexpectedly? Then okay, maybe it is his fault. If he's responding to a job, yeah. If he's responding to a job, you know what? I've responded to jobs all the way up until I retired, and I can tell you, here's the worst thing that ever happens to me. I could be the Van Wyck, it could be on the FDR. I'm traveling at a high rate of speed. I got my full light package on, and the person in that fast lane hits the brakes. Just jams the brakes on. So I even have to swerve or cut between. That obviously that you're told if there's a police car behind you, you get to the right. Go to your right. And so if I had hit that person, would I have been at fault? No, I shouldn't have been, because that person failed to yield to emergency vehicle, right? So it's just that you have to look at every accident and judge it on its particular circumstances. You can't blanket. And I keep going back to QC Beast, but they did. Chiefs were told to give CDs out to cops that had RMP accidents. It was the most idiotic thing, So how do you do that? You have to look at that and look at the accident and judge it by what it is, and be able to go. And when I used to go down to traffic stat, and then I used to go down to force stat, right? You got to be able to. You can say no to the chief. The chief is 3-star chief, whoever he is. It was Scagnelli at the time, and then you just tell him, hey, no, the guy was right. This is the RMP accident. Give him the circumstances and say, this is why I found the person and the operator not at fault. And you have to be able to justify it. That's all, because then they can't say anything. If you stand there and say, well, yeah, I don't know, I think maybe he wasn't at fault. But then you look like an idiot, and then he's going to say, well, see, I told you, the guy was at fault. So if you can justify it and explain it, that's the best way to do it, So, but you have to stick up for I always go back, stick up for the police officers, stick up for the men and women that do the job. That's your job as a leader, right? Your job is not to lead them down the road of you're getting CDs, you're getting grounded, you're getting this and that. No. And you know what? I would also take into consideration somebody that was a good cop, really good cop, that may have had a misfortune and did that. Okay, that's an accident. It's a freaking accident. And you know what? I'm not going to ground you, because I want you out there doing the job that you're doing. Yeah, you have to be compassionate too. You just can't be a robot, It's not just a checkbox all the time.
And I'm glad that you gave that perspective, and that's what makes you and run great leaders is because you step outside the pack and you're not taking this blanket generalized statement and bird's eye view. You're actually analyzing these incidents on a case by case basis. That's what leaders do. And you have part of leadership. There's leadership traits that I really believe in. And one important leadership trait is courage. That's having the courage to make a decision that doesn't have that blanket decision that separates yourself from the pack. With that being said, I think we analyzed between our network for the past 2 years the failures of this crime fighting tactic. So I just say the message to the police officers out there is what I said earlier. I'm not going to lie. After this conversation, if I put on the uniform today, or if I was in plain clothes and someone would take off, it would be extremely difficult to think about what did Rob say and not pursue that car. What did John say? We all have these conversations. What did I say to myself? So that's why, again, I'll go back to, I think we need the culture of the job has to be a vested interest. We all have to be in on it. Everyone has to protect each other by protecting the person next to you or the person on the radio. And if it needs to be terminated, because there are some exceptions, but those exceptions are rare, then terminate it, because you're not only protecting yourself, but you're protecting your brother. So with that being said, let's talk about it, right? Should I stay or should I go within the NYPD? And I have this question. And to me, this was the do I continue on in the police department or move on, right? Because my career was tainted by the CCRB. I could not get promoted to captain because I didn't take the life of someone else that was questionable, and I never cheated on my taxes. So I couldn't get promoted to captain, unlike John Shell. I couldn't get promoted to captain because of CCRBs. And those were allegations that I did not get due process to take them to administrative trial. And I was offered to go to Intel or Squad, and I wouldn't be on the street, but things I didn't want to do. So I asked myself, if I did that, would I just be surviving or would I be living? So that's my question. Under Eric Adams' administration and potentially being reelected or potentially under Mamdani, would you be surviving or would you just be living? What are your thoughts on that? And what I mean by surviving is it's just being there and being miserable, or could you go to another profession or another agency and live happily?
So I think we should probably break it down by rank first, because I think each specific rank has a different answer, right? So for me, I'll talk about my rank, and then you could talk about your rank. We'll talk about police officers, and I'll throw it back to you for police officers. I think if we go back and forth. So when I see police officers, I think that depending on how much time you have on the job is whether you should stay or go. Okay. If you're close to the end, I think you should stay and finish it out, because even if the administration changes, which I'm suspecting that it will, you have the 4 months now before November, before we actually know which direction it's going to be in. So I wouldn't leave now. I would say, all right, if Curtis gets in, I would say stay. I think the handcuffs are gonna come off. It's almost gonna be like a Giuliani Bratton reborn. But if you're young and Modami gets in and you got 4 years on the job, I say maybe stay a year to see how it is, but then run. I would bolt at that point, because there's other opportunities out there. There's other law enforcement out there. So that's how I would think. I would talk about how a police officer should look at it. Look at your time. Look how much time you have left, and definitely look at the election, because the election has huge consequences. When it's finally comes through, hoping for the best, but it has huge consequences either way. So, what do you think a police officer should do if he has a small amount of time on a job or a lot of time on the job?
So that's an interesting thing, right? If you're early on in your career and at the end of your career, I think those decisions are much easier. It's much easier to take an exit early on because you don't have as much time vested in. And it's easier when you're on your way out to make that decision. Hey, if I have 6 months left, do I stay and leave at 20? If you wanted to stay an extra year or two. And I think a question that should be going through your head, especially if you're new. If you're new and you're not eating, sleeping, and shitting, thinking about policing, and you're fantasizing about your exit or what it would be like, then it's time to go. Especially if you're new on the job. Because I would probably think for you, but John and I talked about this. When I was new, the job was so much fun. I enjoyed it so much that my partner at the time, when we were doing patrol, we would say, if we don't go back to the precinct and end the tour, like, how long would it take till they tell us that we have to come back? You didn't want to take a day off. You didn't want to miss anything. The job was so fun. Why was it fun? Morale was so high. Manpower was high. Everyone wanted to be a cop. Were there issues? Of course there were. There was issues with the media. There always are. There were issues with the DA's office. There was issues with CCRB. But we had much more backbone and support. And the morale was the best thing. Morale and leadership. We had great leaders within the police department. And those two things, I think, are the bookends. Morale and leadership. You have those two things. All these problems in between, how much salary, whatever. Nobody cared. We weren't making big money because the job was fun. It was the camaraderie. You didn't want to take a day off because you didn't want to miss the fun. I'd go to work and there were balloons thrown on top of you with water, crickets in the car, mice in the car. We used to have people put mayonnaise on car door handles. It was fun. It was the camaraderie. And we went out and we were still professional. And then you had leaders. You had people on the job that you emulated. You know, when I was in the 120 precinct, my first 5 years on the job, there were men and women supervisors. And I talk about Nancy Sirigliano all the time and Freddie Fernandez. I mean, they were leaders. They were like, and they were sergeants. That's the difference. The sergeants at the time, like, wow, I thought a sergeant was a big deal. And then I made sergeant. Nobody cared. It was just a glorified cop. But they were sergeants because they had the backbone. It was morale. It was, you're like, wow, I want to be like them one day. You never even went and passed them. You know, they were it. You never even saw the commanding officer. They were the leaders. They were in charge. And the camaraderie was strong.
Now, if you had 10 to 15 years on, what would be your suggestion for them? Should they stay or should they go?
So that's a great point. This is why I talk about surviving or living. Now, if you're just staying there because I can't leave, my wife doesn't want to leave, my kids, you're just surviving and you're stuck. And I can tell you this, you need to live. And if your job is making you miserable, it's going to affect how your relationship with your wife, or if you're a woman, it's going to affect your relationship with your husband or whatever, your significant others and your kids, because you're not going to be whole. And if you're not happy, I think you should look for another agency or another profession. Yes. And I can tell you this, in retirement, what you did on the job, these are your own stories. No one gives a shit. I traveled throughout the entire country. I traveled the world. No one cares. If you find out you're NYPD, it's about a 10-second conversation and they're on to the next thing. No one cares. It's just your own stories. So if it's just about a paycheck, you need to go.
Right. I agree. I think that it is a very tough decision, especially I would say between the 10 and 15 year mark. But you have to make that decision for your own sanctity. You have to make sure that if your family's happy, that you don't come home and you're not yelling when you come home. You're level-headed. If it starts to affect you, then you need to either seek the professional help that you might need, or if it's that bad, get off the job and go somewhere else. There's plenty of other opportunities. But yeah, and I still think I think you had spoke about it the other day. Politics plays a huge role in the police department. I remember you had asked me, it was, I think, last Friday, you said, did I realize it till I became, till I got promoted? Yeah, that's when it really became noticeable. Because as a cop, you don't notice it. But I think more and more nowadays, because of the atmosphere and because of all the things that can be seen now, how much it plays into it, how the laws and everything else are drummed down to beat you down as a police officer, that it's noticeable, and you have to make an educated decision. And I tell you the truth, if I was between 10 and 15 and I saw Udami coming in, I'd be looking for another police department or another job. I would vest out and look for something else. So that's how I feel about it. Can't hear
My,
you.
my, my
There you
mute
go.
button, I don't know. I keep clicking today. It's not going off, but I've been saying this for a while, and I might get some opposition for this, but I mean it. Those are the people I feel sorry for. 10, 15 years on the job, in the middle, you've invested so much time. The politics changes constantly. It affects your career, how you operate, what is your ability to do what you're paid and trained to do. But I have to admit, I don't feel sorry when there are people over 20 and they're complaining about the gripes of the job and the atrocities. Yes. And they're still there and they don't leave. I don't feel sorry for them because you have the opportunity to leave. And for most of those people, I believe that they don't leave out of fear. Because a lot of times I would get the response from people, well, I can't leave, my kids are in school. I can't leave because this. Why? I find that very disturbing. Why is it that all these skills and traits that you have as a police officer or a detective or a lieutenant, these are traits and characteristics that you have that you can put on a resume. Your ability to analyze issues, to read between the lines, to make observations. These are skills that can be utilized in other avenues and other professions. And with no risk is no reward. And fear keeps people there over 20. But if you're over 20 and you're complaining, I'm sorry, I don't feel bad for you. You have an out. You're just afraid to take it. Someone who's fairly new, I feel sorry for them that they took this leap to become a police officer, but they're still at the point where they don't have to be completely jaded and they have an out. But those people with 10 to 15 years, my heart is really with them because they're on the job and it's like, wow, I put all this time in. But you know what? Even with that, it is still just a career. There are other careers out there. There are other cities out there that you could go. And keep your eye open. Keep one foot out the door and one foot in, and always be ready to make that move. Just like if you're a movie, I love one of the best lines. I can't, Robert De Niro annoys me sometimes, but in the movie Heat, if you remember, that's one of my favorite movies. And he says, I want to be able to pick up and go with, I think it was with the 30 seconds or 60 seconds, right, at any time. And I think that's the kind of way you have to treat the police department if you have 10 to 15 years on is be ready. If something comes up, get your wife ready to go. You get your kids like, hey, if we need to go, we're going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Have a plan, right? That's what the best thing. Have a plan. Have an exit plan. And you know what? If somebody, like after I hit 20 and somebody says, hey, what do you think about the job? I think it's great because you can't say it sucks, because if you say it sucks, the guy's like, well, what are you doing here then? Just fucking retire. And okay. You're right. If you have over 20, you can't complain. It's it. You're in, man. You're in. At any time you can go, So now so if you're a sergeant or a lieutenant with over 5 or in between 5 and 15 or over 15, do you stay? If you're a lieutenant and you're on the captain's list, do you stay?
That's a great point. I think at that point, things become a little trivial. But even with that, if you're a lieutenant, you have all these skills. And at this point, you have 15 years on the job. I think a lot of people are afraid of that carry, right? If I leave, I lose on the variable. But people have to start sitting down and actually doing real math. Because if you had an opportunity to resign with 15 years on the job, and 5 years from that point, you'll get a pension, and you found yourself another agency or another profession, let's say rhetorically speaking, making $120,000 a year. You have a 401k plan, another pension. Well, that variable may be outweighed. And I can tell you right now, it sounds great, but after taxes, it's a nice stipend, but it's not something that increases, right? You have to take your variable and invest on your own to make it worthwhile to make money. And so I think, unfortunately, people are too one-dimensional when it comes to the variable supplement, and they're not thinking outside the box. Unfortunately, because some people are doing so much overtime, there are times that you might have to leave with 19 years on the job and give up your variable. If potentially you can make $16,000 a month, and then you stay the following year, and because you're going to get $10,000 because there's no overtime, well, maybe you have to forfeit the variable. So you need to analyze these things as you go in your career, but it shouldn't just be about money. Marlon says right here, Marlon, what's up, brother? Huge backbone to this family here, finds the Felden family. Marlon says it, tier 3 guys with 10 to go. I agree. That's another discussion we didn't have. There is a difference. There is a comparison between tier 2 and tier 3. If you are tier 3 with 10 years, I'm telling you right now, go. You should go. Take your experience, put NYPD on your resume, and go somewhere else. And because potentially, if you want to be a cop, you can. Because if you want to be a cop, you're going to be Eric Dym. You're going to surpass me. You're going to be the most complained cop. And you're going to look like a monster on your record in your career forever. And you won't be able to go anywhere anyway.
So if you were a lieutenant with 15 years, between 15 and 20 years, and you were on the captain's list, would you go? If Mudami became the became the mayor, would you go?
Great question. Knowing what I know now, right? So the ultimate goal is not to stay as a captain, because captain arguably could be one of the worst ranks in the entire police department, right? You want to get promoted to captain to move on in those executive ranks. And once you move on those executive ranks, you are now entering the realm of politics. And under Mamdani, you have to ask yourself, what type of leader do you want to be? And he's already told you what type of environment it's going to be. And you may not be true to yourself. So yes, know what I know now. If you want to be a real cop and you're a true leader, you have to go. You have to take those skills and you have to go shop somewhere else.
Yeah, because I could see it getting extremely ugly for captains and above, because there's going to be huge politics and anything you do is going to be completely scrutinized. And then you don't know what the promotion policy is going to be. It could be completely gone. Now, you could stay, let's say you became captain at 20. You could stay 15 years and you can retire at deputy chief's pay. But is it going to be worth those 15 years? Obviously, if the Madami gets in, you get at least 4 years, and it's going to be crushing. So is it good to continue to stay? I mean, if you have a cushy position, maybe, but you're still going to feel the repercussions of everything else, right? So, I mean, even if you got a really good position, if you were in narcotics enforcement or you're in intel, you're still going to feel the pain. So I don't know. I would be ventured to say, my opinion is, don't stay. If you became a captain, don't wait for those 15 years. You're going to wish those 15 years away and not be happy when you could go for another career somewhere else, especially being a captain that young. I don't know if you were a captain and you just became captain. Madami, on December 31st, you were promoted to captain, which means you're going to get the captain's duty on January 1st, because that's what they do. As soon as you get promoted, you get the duty. But would you, and Mudami gets sworn in on January 20th or 19th, whatever it is, would you stay or would you go?
Unfortunately, know what I know now. If you are general population and you're not tied to these tiers of nepotism, and you're a male white, alpha male white, or a female white, you need to go. You need to go, because the grind that you'll have to put in to get promoted, the amount of time it will take, will far surpass your counterparts that are black and brown or something with DEI. And it's not being racist. It's honest and it's true. John and I did a podcast on this, recorded about 2 years ago, and we actually gave the data. And the data was in the New York Post and the Daily News. And the data of what it took a female black as captain to get promoted, or a male black, and Asians. And we saw the disparities in the promotions. And I seen it with my own eyes. His name is Jerome Bakke. He was my executive officer for 6 years in PSA 7. I want to tell you, one of the most intelligent guys in the police department. He should have been running a Fortune 500 company. And he had to grind to get into a position to be a commanding officer to get promoted. Mm-hmm. And he was in, I mean, just absolutely ridiculous. Extremely intelligent guy could not get promoted, while his counterparts would get promoted by rocket fuel. And if anyone tells me that he was not discriminated against, I'll show you the data, just as CCRB does with their scientific data, that it was just completely discriminatory.
Yeah, no, I had asked for a command numerous times, and to the borough commander, who was Ray Diaz at the time, and he basically told me, I don't pick the COs at this time. So it was like, you're the CO of the borough, and you can't pick who your commanding officers of the precincts within your borough are. He goes, no, I don't pick them. It comes from downtown. So it was all, like you've said, nepotism. It was all, who I know and who can I, get promoted or whatever. So it becomes very, very difficult. But I think that you're going to see either way, whether it's Sleewell or Madami, I think you're going to see upper echelons like Shell, is even maybe Tish and all those. They're going to leave. They're going to have to go because it's going to change completely, and then it's going to filter down. So normally for a chief like a 1 star or a 2 star, they think that's positioning now because they see movement. And I could only think that you would have to sell your soul at that point to Mudami if he becomes the mayor. You would have to give up everything that you kind of believe in. Being a police officer, being a cop out there, you literally have to give that up because that's not what's going to be wanted in the city if he becomes the mayor. Now, if Curtis Sleewell comes in, I if I'm Curtis, I would make some changes to the upper echelons of the department because of the fact of the corruption and things that go on right now. So I would make changes. So even them are gonna move on, and hopefully they leave on their own accord, or they have to get fired. Like I've seen, 3-star chiefs told you're leaving. I've seen 2-star chiefs told you're leaving. So I mean, yeah, I think there's going to be a change on the top either way. So,
And I hope that we don't come off bitter in a sense, particularly me, right? I was painted as the most complained cop. I was talking about overzealous civilian complaint review board, so it would be easy for a viewer, a friend, a listener, even a hater to say, you're just bitter and mad, so you're telling people to leave the police department. No, I think I give a fair assessment. I'm giving an assessment on what it's like for someone early in their career, what it's like for someone who's middle ground, what it's like for someone at the end. And, when I talk about discrimination towards white males in these ranks, I also think it's unfair to their counterparts that are getting promoted by rocket fuel for DEI or being a loyalist to Eric Adams, because they might have to ask themselves, hey, you don't think I'm good enough? Like, hey, did I get promoted? They have to ask this question. Did I get promoted for my work or I got promoted for DEI? So it's not fair on both ends of the spectrum. It's not fair. It's not a fair level playing field in the police department at all. So, yes, I think we're giving an honest assessment. If you're in that middle ground, especially, I think Marlon's spot on. Tier 3, 10 years, I think those people have to exit. And what I will say is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. There are so many walks of life out there. There are so many opportunities. There are other agencies that would love you. New York City is a wonderful place, but they're a beautiful place to live. It's not the only place. This fantasy you have with the NYPD, we all have it. It's something eternal. And the NYPD was once the goat of policing. And you could always say you were a part of that. Whether it was a day on the job, 2 years, 10 years, 20, people will always find it impressive. But I will tell you this. That conversation starts short of who you are. That may be an opener in a conversation that you worked in the NYPD, but you still have to reflect that you exemplify what that is. Because if you walk around, you're a total boob, and you tell someone you're in the NYPD, and you're like, who was that? The guy that pushed a broom? So It's still you that holds the candle.
Yeah, no, and I agree. Like I've fared well in the department, so my opinion here is not. I'm not like an old crusty guy that says you shouldn't take the job because of this, and that. I'm taking it from the perspective, if I were to do it again, or if I was in that position, seeing the way the job was and seeing the way the job is right now, and how I feel that it's going to turn out, depending on a mayoral election and all the things that are happening through the court systems and through the laws, I would have left the job. I would have said, I'm not going to end up living in a shed when some guy that I arrested is living in my house, driving my car because I can't afford the qualified immunity. I don't. I'm sued and held liable personally. I mean, how do you operate like that? I mean, that's not fair. I'm doing a job and I'm literally working, and I'm doing it on the basis of what I've been taught. And like Sal would always say, my training, right? Always training, right, Sal? And then I do it, and then something happens, and then I turn around and get sued, and for some reason they decide that they're not going to indemnify me, and then I could be sued personally. Now what happens, right? I can lose everything. So yeah, I'm not saying it from the old grouchy old man say don't take the job, because if it was different, if it hadn't changed in the past 5-10 years, I would have told you take the job. Absolutely. Unequivocally take it and enjoy it and have fun, because it is a fun job. But the way I see it now is there's too many negative things on the job that could have an adverse effect on you for the rest of your life. Like you spoke about, the CCRBs, the things like that. Imagine going to jail. Imagine going to jail for something, and a vehicle pursuit. All of a sudden, the attorney general says, you know what? You should have been terminated. You caused the death of that someone. So now I'm going to put you in for vehicular manslaughter. Can you imagine that? Imagine spending 5 years in jail. I mean, come on. So I'm just trying to be honest. And yeah, I'm not trying to be nasty or old or anything else. Well, I am old, but my perception. But this is a caring podcast. We're, like we've said before, we want to tell you what we feel, and yeah, it's still your decision, obviously. But this is what but based on our learning, our experiences, and this is how we feel. That you could. Nobody says you have to. Nobody says to take our opinion. But yeah, I think it's important to get it out there so that it puts a thought in your head.
I feel like I'm doing the roundtable with Marlon, because Marlon's got some great comments today.
I know
Marlon,
he's holding the chat together.
Yeah, great comment here. He's right, and he's right, because I travel the entire country, travel in an RV, and I go school to school doing jiu-jitsu. And at jiu-jitsu, you meet all walks of life, but I always meet cops. There's always a couple of cops there from different places. I met cops from Alaska, all over the country. And I can tell you, I've met some cops that work in departments that have similarities to the NYPD, like LA and some of these big cities that are blue and democratic. But I've went to places where I met cops from different police departments, and they have a far different experience, and they're quite happy. They have a take-home car. They're respected. They have a great relationship with their department. For instance, Laguna Beach, right? Those guys were fantastic. They were awesome. What a tight knit, like the professionalism, the way they treat each other, the way they treated me, my family, just phenomenal. Like Marlon says here, police departments around the country are dying for guys right now. Spot on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're hurting everyone, and that's even in red cities. You can have both a mentally healthier work life and healthier lifestyle in one of those departments while doing one corner of the work. You know what? He's absolutely right with that. There are plenty of departments and beautiful places, like Texas. You can get a home that's pretty affordable. You can have a nice life. And even as a police officer, take home that car. No matter what, if you're a police officer, and I've seen it so many times, you're working in the Bronx or Manhattan, and you're going to go to the realtor, and they're going to show you homes in Westchester, and you're going to go, 25,000 property tax in New Rochelle. Show me Rockland. Then you're going to go to Rockland, and those taxes are going to be high too. And then they're going to take you to Orange County, and this is what happens to most of the police officers. If they find the home that they love, but then they realize it's 80 miles from home, and you're spending 2 hours to work, 2 hours home. You spend all that day for this house you never even see. So you know what, Marlon? You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Not to mention the gas and everything else, right? You mentioned the time, the time that you take away from your family. And you're right. And you know what? If you look at Monroe in Orange County, their taxes are up there, bro. They're close to 19,000 $20,000. So I mean, you think you're getting a bargain, but you're not. So eventually, you know, people from the city move up, and it gets saturated, and then taxes go up as well. So it's yeah, there's other opportunities like Marlon's saying here, Florida, Texas departments, yeah, and they are giving recruiting bonuses. Like I've seen up to $10,000 recruiting bonus. So I mean, yeah, there's opportunity. You know what it is just taking that first step. That's the hard part. And somebody said it earlier in the chat. I didn't write it down, but it might have been Patrick Donahue. But you get complacent in your position, and you feel that at a certain point, this is all I know. I only know the NYPD. I can't do anything else. And you become timid as far as taking that next step, and you shouldn't, because you know what? If you've done 20 years in the NYPD, you've done a lot of things. Even 10, 15 years, 5 years in the NYPD. You have the background of the NYPD. You've done a lot. You've done a lot more probably than some of these other municipalities, and you have the power to move forward and to go to another department, and you shouldn't be scared. So I
And
just want to give a shout out to
sure.
Arbad because he had donated. I'm going to say, because it's 4th of July, I'm going to say the beer and hot dogs. Right? We'll go to
Hot dog contest. Curtis Steele was talking about that today. I would love to do that.
I know. He said he was there, right? He said he was third place.
Third place. How many hot dogs you need to have third place when you're going up? What was it, Joey Donuts?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they do it. But our bad team, I think that's when we were talking about the vehicle pursuits at Fireworks and T. Happy early Independence Day. If you want to see some terrifying pursuits, search for Trooper Bird, Arizona State Police. They literally take pursuits to death. Even for routine motor vehicle stops, NYPD needs a grappler. There's Joey Chestnuts, right? There you go. He's another. I don't know how the next night. How they feel the next night. I don't understand how they feel. Like, I mean, imagine you're sitting there, your belly must be rolling. So,
if the one hot dog right there had enough.
I know. We don't usually eat them. But I think for the holiday, maybe who knows? But
I'm glad you mentioned that. By the way, I'm sorry. I just want to say, we had Curtis Lewa on today, and I didn't want to interrupt him. It was such a great interview and great to hear from him. So there were some people who left coffee and donuts. If you happen to be watching right now, a friend and listener, if you provided coffee and donuts, John and I did see it. Sorry we didn't acknowledge you. I want to thank you. If you did donate with coffee and donuts, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. And just what Pat Donahue says, a Cat 1 car makes living in Orange County and Suffolk County more tolerable. I think that's why the captains and above and the lieutenants from IAB and they all work. That's where they all live, right? They're all out there because it's not only gas and toll, right? So, and insurance, everything. It is much more. It's a big raise when you think about it. And that's why I always say the squad lieutenants, they should have had cars. Every one of the squads, rather than IEB, squad lieutenants should have, squad commanders should have definitely got cars too, because they're important as the XO and the CO or whatever. So, there was a few questions. So I would like to go to the point where we answer some questions from the chat or whatever.
Rob, I think we need like a drum roll when it comes to Q&A. Like, brrr,
right.
goes the Q&A.
Now live the jump. I saw one early. If anybody has a question, just throw it in the chat. We'll look at it, read it out. Christie early on, he asked, that was real early in the chat, asked about what do you think that the 2025 cops are struggling with the most right now? So a cop comes on, I guess he's a cop in 2025. What's his biggest struggle right now? What do you think?
That's a great question. So I think that would be the mission, like defining what is the mission of a police officer. I think that's the misdirection. I think for most people, if I was a young cop today, the question would be like, what is my role? what is my job? What is my mission? I think that's where the lines are blurred at this point because of the infection. I call it infection by the politicians, Eric Adams, de Blasio, and now potentially Mamdani. It's the infectious politics that have distorted the police profession, and no longer do people really know what their mission is. I would be curious to speak to some young cops to ask them what they think their role or their identity is as a police officer today. Like, what is their mission? What would be their mission statement? If we asked 50 young police officers to write what's the mission statement of a police officer and put it in a suggestion box, I think we'd be blown away on the answers.
Yeah. No, and you know what it is too? I think that is probably some misdirection because I don't think some of this leadership or the supervisors, like Mikey G saying, right? The leadership and nobody to teach him the experience that he should have, right? So some of them don't even know because it hasn't been handed down. And all it's been is it could be a numbers game. It could be don't do this and don't do that. It's what can I do and what should I do? And you're right. I think that would be a really good question to survey cops and say, hey, what is it that what you think you should be doing, and what is your most concern here? I mean, is your concern that I'm not going to be able to get days off because I'm working overtime, every other day? Is that a concern? Is my concern about my family? What's going to happen to my family when I don't come home for a week? Those are all concerns. But does the job really care about that? Does the job think about that? No. What the job wants to do is, we're going to bring down crime. After 3 years, suddenly we're gonna bring down crime because it's an election year. And the police officers, what is their direction? How do they know what to do? And it changes so often. What's the core mission? Do they really even know what the core mission is? So I think, it's a good question. It's a hard question. So, go ahead, Eric.
I'd like to read off this question. I think it's a great question. QC Beast really contributed a lot to the chat today. Just want to let the friends and listeners know we like it when you are constantly on the chat and you put professional stuff and it's related to the topic. We appreciate it. So if you ever think like, hey, I'm being annoying, you're not. We appreciate it. So here's a question. Do you think that the pendulum will swing and the fun times will come back? That is a great question. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I don't think it will ever swing back completely to what it was. And the reason why is I say this. So over years and decades of policing in history, we have seen politics play a role. And we've seen, especially in the 70s, a lot of mirror of what's going on right now. And we did see the pendulum come back. But these were policies and protocol that were changed that affected the police department. What we see now, and this is not just NYPD throughout the entire country, that I think has changed the profession is two things. One, we didn't just change policy, we changed law. Second thing is we're moving into replacing police officers with AI and robotics. So to your answer, I think it can come back in a better version than it is now, but I don't think it could ever go back to what it was.
Yeah, no, I think there's going to be an adjustment period here. Like you said, there could be a swing back, and that's a political swing back, in my opinion, because otherwise, if you stay on the same course now, or the course gets worse, it's only going to get worse. So you need some sort of political swing back. So you need a Curtis Leewell to come in and change the direction of the pendulum. Is it going to come completely back? No, I don't ever see that. I see, like you said, there are laws, there's stipulations, and it's eventually it drums down the capabilities of the police officers. It limits them. It handcuffs them. So it could there to be change in laws, then the pendulum may swing all the way back. But until there's those changes, you're not going to get all the way back to where you're able to do your job and be free of be free of being scared of being yourself put in jail or being sued or anything else. So what is Ron has a question?
Best question today, by the way. This is awesome.
He said, "Well,
Ron
I have
Mason.
a quick. Go ahead."
No, Ron Mason says, I have a question for Eric. How does it feel doing a double podcast and Chief No Cash denies your OT slip? Well, if we were at one police plaza, I'm sure I could find a way.
Listen, I'll be glad to let you take it in time. So it's fine. You want to take it in time? No, but the cash I can't give you. No,
No Cash. That's the best nickname ever.
no cash. So, hey, Nike Head 27 asked, "Is the NYPD a career or an opportunity?" What do you think?
That's a great question, and it's a loaded question, right? So
Yeah,
I would say it's both, and it depends on who you are and what you want to do. I mean, if you're in the police department and you have a hell of a connection and you're in that tier 1 and that tier 2, well, you know what? It may be both. You may have an opportunity to make detective in 18 months because your last name is Shea, and that may be a hell of a career. But if you're general population, you're Eric Dym or you're Rob No Cash, guess what? It's a brief opportunity, and you may have to look at what else is out there.
yeah. I always say you want to make it your career, and then get opportunity, because this way you've developed yourself. There's somebody from ESU retired, and he put a statement out. I wish I know Steve Stefanakis put it out on social media. I forget the police officer's name, but he said, "Don't be a badass out of the gate. Learn the job first, then be a badass." So I think that, to the point, is, hey, make it your career, and then look for your opportunities. Don't come on and think that, I'm gonna get, like you just said, Shay's son. You also got Rodney Harrison's daughter. Don't think you're coming on and it's an opportunity for me to become a detective. No, you should have made it a career first, because you didn't. You just got promoted because of nepotism, and that's it. I mean, that blows my mind that even as a father, you would do that to your daughter or your son. Let them learn the job, let them learn the career, and then give them the opportunity, and give everybody the opportunity then, right? So yeah, I mean, like Mikey G says, it's sometimes the NYPD should just be a stepping stone, and it could be, but it's a good stepping stone. So
I think that's a great point. I think you have to have the mindset and hopefully have good people around you and good family. You get on the job when you're young and you'll see the world in the mannerisms we do today, and in the aspect we get to see. Right, you get older, you get wiser, and you see things through a different lens. Well, hopefully you have good family around you to tell you, like, hey, there's a civilian complaint review board out there that has complete bias and disdain for policing and can really hurt your career. Get in while it's hot and get out.
yeah,
If you want to be a rock star cop and you're running and gunning, you got to get in and get out. Because if you stay there too long and CCRB gets you on their radar, well, then you are stuck in the NYPD. Because now, once your record gets tainted with these allegations by the CCRB, this is on your public record, and you're not attractable to other agencies and other forms of employment. I say it all the time. Even if you're out in the dating world, if you were single and you're of all these complaints, and a smart girl today is going to look it up and go, "Whoa, Eric Dym's a monster. I'm not going out with this guy." Right?
yeah.
CCRB can affect not just your career but your entire life.
Yeah, no, it's too easy to Google somebody's name and come up with that 50A, and then put your name in and say, "Oh my God, who am I dating, and why would I even bother?" Absolutely. Pat Donahue just gave me a solid idea, though. He said, "I don't even have to give you overtime and time. I'm going to make you work a day for a day." So, straight up now, it's no cash, no time. I'm gonna take both words.
No,
So yeah,
no cash is making Eric do a day for a day.
Oh man, oh. But yeah, so I don't know. I didn't see any more. Did you see anything else? Any other questions? Good questions. And Marlon, thanks for keeping the chat alive. Our
Yeah,
usual
no,
listeners.
listen, feel free if anyone wants to pop any questions. I know there's been a lot of shows, a lot of content. We love what's unique about this network, and I say that just network because all the shows, we encourage engagement. Really important to the show. A lot of times we're going over stuff, and someone puts on a comment like, they just gave
Yeah,
me an angle, something to think about. So I appreciate it. I think ultimately what I'm most impressed by, I have to say, when John and I started podcasting, and now we grown into this network, and so great that we have all these people, and we got such a great team right now, and it's a family. And I love that we're all doing this together. And a lot of times the question was posed to me like, "What are you gonna do?" Like people were making fun of me and John. It was pretty funny. Like, they're like, "What are you gonna do when you run out of content?" They're like, "What?" I feel like you ever watch that old I Love Lucy episode where she's trying to catch all the dogs. She's working an assembly line and she can't get to all them.
yeah. The
That's how
chocolate,
I
right?
feel.
Yeah,
Yeah. That was in the chocolates, right? She's like,
yeah,
I feel like that's this network. Like, there's so much content. New York City is such a content machine, and we can't even get to it all. It's just like we're trying to grab it all, but we can't. There's just so much going on. So I love the questions. I think it's great. Sometimes the questions will be light. Awesome show. I'm so glad to do the show with you, Rob. I love your take on stuff. I love your perspective, and I'm so glad that you're part of this. And I like to tell the friends and listeners, I want to encourage them, check out Pete Forcelli and Tom Joyce. Those are two awesome guys. Great addition to the network. They put on a hell of a pilot. They had a great guest on. Check it out. His name is Carlos Canino, and some
yeah.
of his stories were really cool. He talks about being an undercover in Puerto Rico. Like, a hell of an experience this guy had. Great show. Check it out. Sal Greco is doing a great job digging into politics. John and myself with different array of topics, and the executive perspective, man, it's so cool. Unique eye on things, and we appreciate all the stuff Jack does behind the scenes. We'll really be building a part of this network, and the friends and listeners on the chat, you're a major part. And Marlon, man, he is like the backbone of this operation.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate it. What a hell of a team. So I hope I didn't forget anyone. I think
No,
I
I
got
think
them
you
all.
got it right. Listen, I just Mike Freed, a good friend of the podcast. I just want to answer his question and then I'll close it out. The question is, does Zohan keep Shell and Kaz if he's elected, and will one of them be the PC? You know what? I don't think so. You know why I don't think so? Because they have allegiance to Adams, and I think they're both out, and he's going to put somebody that he can trust as the PC in. And I think maybe even because of his hatred, he gets rid of Daughtry and gets rid of the position, because he's making that a whole other community service thing. So he'll put somebody in position of that and get rid of that. So that's my opinion. Anything on that question, Eric? Do you think he's going to keep those two, or they're going to be sweeping in the sanitation or playing with the drones out on the beach?
That's a great question, by the way. So I think that you nailed it, because there is obviously rhetoric, and Mamdani and Eric Adams have their ear to the ground. There are people letting them know, they're telling Mamdani, listen, they're saying you're 2.0. They're saying you're the same thing as Eric. So, and one thing I because this was a corrupt administration, I'm sure he doesn't trust them. So I don't see those two hanging on at all. I think, and we see it right now, right? Kaz Daughtry is always, as Sal says, it's pretty funny self-promotion. He's out there with a camera. He's promoting himself.
Right.
John Shell clearly is trying to find a job out there. I don't think they stay. I think the time was up a long time ago, but they're like Norwegian rats also. Eric Adams and John Shell and Kaz, these guys survive anything.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see who he picks. It'll be interesting. Hey, so I just want to thank everybody in the chat. Eric, really, thank you so much for being on today. I mean, Ron's great, but you're much nicer to look at. So if you ever want one of those hugs, I can give you one.
Yeah,
But
right. Well, apparently that picture is me and you. So
you don't have to go and drag this time. I'll take you to where you are. Um, but yeah, so I just want to wish everybody a happy 4th. You know, I think John and Eric, you'll be on with Marlon on July 4th in the morning hours, right?
yeah, we want everyone to have a good July 4th, but since the show was early, we figured we'll do the show. We wish everyone to have a great July 4th. And of course, tomorrow, Sal Greco.
Sal Greco,
And
yeah.
yeah, Sal Greco show as always. I think tomorrow will be a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't forget, like you said, the 10-4 Tavern, right, on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. or 1900 hours with, our good friends, so that was a really good show. Like you said, I think they're going to have Mike O'Keefe on next week, who is a detective that was actually a part of the Kiko Garcia. I was looking to get him on, but I was unable to get him on. But yeah, that should be a really good one. And I don't know anything else, Eric. You want to close it out? You and John are my boss, so I'll let you close it out there, brother.
Yeah, right. Well, I say it all the time. I tell Jack, right? Jack's listen. I'm like, we're like the Wu-Tang Clan. We're all like our own MCs, and we come together. Rob, I want to thank you, man. It's a pleasure doing the episode with you. Ron, I hope you're having a great birthday. Find Unfiltered family. This was an awesome show. Thank you, everyone. Rob, you're the man. Everyone,
Thanks.
have a good night.
You too. What are you laughing at?